Out of executive session, call the meeting to order. First item always is the pledge to our flag. Councilmember Esparza, would you lead us?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And for the record, we have 6 council members today, and Councilmember Huffaker is not with us today. First item on today's agenda are consent items, which includes the agenda vouchers and the minutes from the previous meetings, a resolution regarding meeting dates. And if we could, for the record, in order to accommodate staff that needs to leave, I'd like to move item K to our very first action item, if that works for the council members.
Your Honor, I would make a motion that we approve the consent agenda consisting of this evening's agenda, the vouchers, minutes from previous meetings, with the exception for the agenda that listed on our agenda, item K, be our first item under action.
Okay.
There, and that we adopt resolution 2019-26, revising the regular meeting schedule of the City Council for November and December 2019.
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Kulas, second by Councilmember Markart to approve this evening's agenda with the change that item K be moved ahead of action item A. Vouchers, minutes from their previous meetings, and resolution number 2019-26, revising the regular meeting of the Wenatchee City Council for both November and December of 2019. Discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next item on our agenda tonight would be citizens' comment. We would ask any member of the audience that wish to address the council on an item that is not one of our public hearing items. We ask you to come up and give us your name and address, and we'd give you about 3 minutes. So any takers in the audience wish to address the council, come up, sir. Sit down, yep. Name and address for the record.
My name is Chris Waithman, and I live at 315 Fuller Street in Wenatchee.
Thank you.
And my issue is the senior disability rate reduction for the water and sewer.
Okay.
I've been on the reduction for about 2 years, and my granddaughter got a job at Stan's and made like $10,000. It would prorate out to about $10,000. And so I took they requested an update at the department upstairs, and it put me over the threshold by $1,200, something like that. And my contention is that the threshold has been $40,000 for many years, as far as I understand, but it has not increased with the cost of living. And that's one thing. I think the threshold should be indexed with the cost of living. And another thing is, since my granddaughter is not a financial contributing member of the household, why does her income affect me? And my rate went from like $75 for 2 months to over $214.
Yeah, you probably got the full 60% discount or something, yeah.
Yeah, I had the full discount.
Yeah.
And it didn't just double, it went up about 300%.
So I'll have our staff look at it. I think at the end of the day, I know it's sort of be per household, and I think if we have other members living in the household, I think for our math, I think that's what we use, but I could have staff look at it. In terms of adjusting it for cost of living, I think that's something that council could probably do. I think this isn't state law driven, is it?
I want to say that I want to say that you turned it off. I do believe that our code, I don't know it for sure, but I thought our code referenced a state threshold that would increase whenever the state increases it. I'll have to check with our utility billing supervisor and just make sure. I remember hearing a little bit about what you're about your circumstances. And yes, we do base it off of the household income, and I believe that's how the code is written. And I don't know, Steve, you might know this better than I do. But I believe that it is kind of the rules that we have to work with are somewhat based in what state law allows us and prescribes for us. But we'll definitely look into it, and I'll get back to the mayor on that.
Yeah, we had Community Action Council do some of the qualifications, so it's consistent with their guidelines program that are state-based, yeah.
So we will look into it, and then if we, make sure you can leave us a phone number if staff doesn't already have it, and one of us will get back to you to see, one, if we can do the COLA, and I'm fairly certain the rules of households or whoever's living there, but let us look at the COLA issue and the other one, and we'll get back to you. Does that work? Okay, thank you. Great, thank you.
Chris, can you give us your phone number? What's your phone number?
All right, anybody else wish to address the council on any item that's not on today's agenda or part of the public hearing?
509-293.
See no other takers. So our first item today is a presentation regarding the Western Foothills Impact Fee Study presentation. So for council members and audience, as we brought to your attention, probably 6 weeks ago or so, I'm losing track, we looked at a number of road connections in our Western Foothills, came up with a $20 million cost estimate to put all those together. We've got maybe 12 to 1,500 pending lots in our Western Foothills, and the decision was, should we be looking at impact fees in some variety, impact fees per lot? Apparently, you just can't decide to do it one day because you have to have a professional study done. And so we are this is sort of phase one of a professional study. So you have our consultants and Rob, and I'll just turn it over to Rob and Jesse and our consultants to help figure this all out.
Good evening. Rob Jammerman, Public Works Director, and to my left here is Ms. Kendra Brayland with Fair and Peers. As the mayor mentioned, Steve King and I gave a presentation to the council in May of this year regarding the Western Foothills, some of the road connections that we're looking up there with the pending development, and we asked for council's direction to move forward with at least looking at an impact fee study for the Western Foothills area. And so that's what we're here tonight. We've had a great process with Fair and Peers looking at the area. And so Kendra will walk you through this, and then we'll be at the end asking for the direction moving forward. So with that, I'll turn it over to Kendra.
All right, thank you. Good evening, and thank you again for having me. As Rob mentioned, my name is Kendra Brayland. I work with Fair and Peers. We're a transportation planning and engineering firm. And more relevantly to this study, we lead transportation impact fee program development kind of all over the state. So I've personally been involved in, I think, 20 of these types of studies, and I know my firm has done about 30 in Washington state. So I've been asked to kind of provide kind of a brief overview of the feasibility analysis that we've been working with the city on over the past couple of months, and happy to have any questions you have. If they occur to you during the presentation, by all means, just stop me. I'm happy to take them as we go or take them at the end. So quick overview of the topics that I wanted to cover tonight. A little bit of background about impact fee programs, what the state allows, how that relates to kind of Wenatchee's thoughts around the Western Foothills. Impact fee program mechanics, just how these programs are structured. And then we will focus specifically on kind of the Western Foothills and what a program might look like here, specifically the geography, the amount of planned growth, and the potential types of projects that you might want to fund. We will result kind of at the end of this with just kind of a report back on what we think might be a maximum defensible fee. And so I do want to stress there are some large numbers at the end of this presentation, and those are literally a mathematical calculation of your upper limit. Most communities will receive an impact fee nexus study, and they often won't charge all the way up to that maximum limit. So I just wanted to kind of set expectations and maybe stop anyone from being alarmed as they see the final slides of this presentation. And then last but not least, we've got some recommendations and hopefully some good discussion.
We can decide at the end, if we decide to do all this, the city council has the authority not to use what the actual cost is. But-
Yes.
Okay.
That is absolutely a council decision, not a consultant decision. So what is an impact fee program? Just some basics. It's a one-time charge on new development, so it's not something that you're charging over and over again. It was authorized under the 1990 Growth Management Act, and it really is very limited in terms of the types of infrastructure that it can fund. It needs to be infrastructure that provides capacity for future development. There are some additional parameters. The projects that you're funding need to be within your capital facilities element. They also have to be within the right-of-way of local streets and roads. But the big one is really the provision of capacity. So impact fees can't be used for things like transit operations. They can't be used for things like pothole repair. We really do need to justify how these projects are truly facilitating future development. Around the state and actually under state law, there are 4 types of impact fees that can be levied. Fire, parks, and schools are other types than transportation, but the focus of our feasibility study and of our presentation tonight is exclusively on transportation impact fees. Before we get into it, I did want to just kind of recognize that there are other kind of development-oriented funding mechanisms that cities have on their disposal. I will say that there are over 70 transportation impact fees around the state, and these other types tend to be less common just for some of their shortcomings. There's an impact fee mechanism under the Local Transportation Act. It's much less common because it requires a lot more upfront analysis. There's impact fees that can be levied under a transportation benefit district. They've got actually some different ways that you can spend the money, but they can only be used for non-residential uses. And when we're talking about this specific area of the city, probably not something we'd want to look to. And then I think everyone around the, kind of in the room here is very familiar with the State Environmental Policy Act, kind of its limitations and complexities, and that's something that, of course, is at your disposal. And then impact fees, it's also really important to stress, they're just one of many packages. Impact fees are not going to fund likely 100% of any project. Typically, they don't. So they're often packaged with city general funds, grant funding, other, kind of development exactions, real estate excise tax. There's a lot of different choices that you can use to fund your project. So this is just one source we're talking about tonight. Looking around the state, as I mentioned, there's over 70 programs. Couldn't show all of that on this chart, so I thought it would be good just to kind of talk about programs either in Eastern Washington or for jurisdictions that feel a little more similar to Wenatchee and specifically the Western Foothills. So probably your takeaway as you're looking at this chart is that your existing Broadview program actually has one of the highest per dwelling unit fees assessed of this kind of sampling. Within the Puget Sound, kind of the average is kind of 5,000 to 6,000, but when you get outside of the Puget Sound, rates tend to be lower. Big reasons for this is how the Broadview program is structured. It's not a citywide program. It's only for a specific area, and you're really using it as a tool to build those critical fire access links that really do have a strong connection to development. So looking around the state and the other types of programs, often they have a much stronger kind of existing deficiency or existing development connection. So that's probably why your funding, your fee program is a bit higher than what we might consider to be some of your peer jurisdictions. State law is pretty clear cut in terms of how impact fees should be structured. So as I mentioned before, first of all, the projects all need to be within your capital facilities element. So in starting this program, it'll be really important that you make sure that all of those projects are in there. They don't have to be in there right now, but by the time you start levying fees, it would be important that they're all in there. Then when we look across your capital facilities element, of course, there's a lot of different types of projects there, even from a transportation basis. We'd want to look to those projects that have a capacity nexus within this area. Then there's some other kind of calculations that have to occur under state law. One, it's really important that we're taking out the cost of existing deficiencies. So that portion of those projects that are rectifying kind of problems in your system today, we'll talk later in detail in the presentation about some different approaches for that. And then last but not least, the state kind of requires that you do some modeling to understand who's using the projects, because you can't be charging impact fees for project trips that aren't really related to the area where the fees are being assessed. So we've done some analysis on that. So when you strip away all those costs, you're left with kind of impact fee eligible costs, and then that is then spread over the growth in trips within your growth area, and we'll talk about what that looks like here. So shifting our focus specifically to the Western foothills. Geography on the screen here, just quick map showing some of the potential projects, as you all know, kind of where it is located in the city. Of course, you've got an existing Broadview program, and this is a larger area that we would be looking at.
And we've handed that map out to each of you, so you should have it there.
When we think about the amount of growth in the Western foothills, there's a few important things to consider. First of all, there's existing development out there today. So it's not like we're starting with a greenfield with nothing there. There are about 1,500 housing units that are existing that we need to be mindful of in developing impact fee calculations. Build out over the next kind of 20 years, what we've heard from staff, anticipates an additional 1,275 units. So when we look out over a 20-year period, build out of this area might include about 2,800 units. And again, this is over kind of a 20-year period. So when in looking at kind of how an impact fee program might be structured, of course, the most important thing is what are you going to fund? What types of projects are you going to deliver to improve kind of the area for future development? And there were kind of two kind of packages of projects we looked at. The first is basic fire access improvements. So you can see them on the screen. These projects are also shown on your map. This is roughly 11 projects valued at about a little over $20 million. These projects are what would be needed to provide adequate fire access to support the additional 1,275 units. So this is generally to meet city code, to make sure that there's safe emergency access, either for fire or just other, kind of events that could occur in the area. These are not generally projects that are focused on mobility. So they truly are, they provide mobility. So I wanna recognize that, but the true focus of these projects is to make sure that we're providing adequate fire access for development.
And I'd like to just quickly add on that slide. So we some of the estimates have been vetted. We had RH2 do some studies up in the Western foothills, but some of them we are just, for this purpose of the study, we're just an order of magnitude. We also typically, we have to approach these roads as if the city, if we were to go in and build them without development, we'd have to buy the right of way and build the improvements. So as an example, you can see some of those high costs. That's anticipating buying right of way. The likelihood is actually that developers will build and dedicate some of these roads, but that's just to sort of give you a feel for why it's 20 million. And if you tell us you want us to move on to stage 2 after tonight, we'll need to go back through and really ground truth these estimates and try to get them to a little bit closer number that we feel that we're comfortable with.
The second package of improvements is a larger package, in total about $30 million. And this includes a combination of kind of some of those fire access improvements that you saw on the prior slide, and in addition, another $9 million in what we'd call kind of multimodal or complete streets improvements within the area. So these are improvements that are really focused on not just providing fire access to support the new 1,275 units, but these would be providing a higher quality level of mobility within the entirety of the Western foothills. So these would benefit not only kind of those future housing units, but they would also benefit kind of existing development that's in the Western foothills. So you can see kind of the projects on the screen. There is one project that is based on kind of future level of service need, Fifth and Western. Future modeling just kind of shows that as development occurs in this area, at one point improvement of that intersection would be necessary to meet the city's level of service standard. So as promised, we're going to go into some detail about existing deficiency. And I'll go as quickly as I can, but I'm happy to kind of elaborate with any questions you might have. We worked really closely with staff to really kind of think carefully about how would you structure this program. And in kind of a key piece of impact fees that's really kind of central to every program is making sure that we're charging future development for what it should be paying for, and that we're not charging it for fixing kind of existing problems in the system or through addressing kind of needs that existing development already has. That is really clear cut in impact fee in the Growth Management Act. That's really the duty of the city to serve those existing needs. So when we looked at how you would structure existing deficiencies, we've got two approaches. The first is the very standard approach. It's the most typical, applied all over the state, and it's really to kind of look at who's using the facilities, and to the extent that, particularly for those mobility projects, complete streets projects, we know that there's already 1,500 households out there. And so while we're adding roughly 1,300 households, most of the trips that's going to use those facilities in the future are existing users. And so we use kind of that ratio to determine an existing deficiency percentage. And so in that case, it would be about 54%. So essentially you're taking, the projects and you're taking a haircut of about half and saying we can't charge these to impact fees because these projects are really geared towards benefiting the Western foothills as a whole, both future and existing users. The second impact fee approach, that deficiency approach that we looked at, was actually taken from your existing Broadview program. So particularly under those fire access improvement projects, if we're really to go with kind of that package, we recognized that those projects, while they probably would provide some additional level of amenity and connectivity, the primary purpose of those projects are to provide the fire access needed for the future development. City probably wouldn't be moving forward with those projects but for future development. And so in that case, and looking to the way that the Broadview program is done, what we did was we looked at that list and we said, are there any improvements that would be needed to address just who's on the ground today? Is there anything that the city would do irregardless of development? And we identified two projects valued at a total of $1.6 million. And so under that approach, what we'd say is pretty much of those fire access improvement projects, they're not deficiency projects. All of them are future development geared, but that we should extract that $1.6 million, those two projects that are needed to provide fire access under current conditions. So there's some math on the screen. If you're curious of kind of how we calculated it, these are kind of the calculations. I'm not going to dwell here, but just know that if we were to move forward, we'd be thinking thoughtfully about making sure that we're doing our due diligence to make sure that we're calculating the impact fees fairly. And so I wanted to get to the slide that I promised at the beginning of the presentation would be here with some very large numbers. So we've come up after looking at kind of those project lists and in recognition of the amount of growth that you're anticipating over the next 20 years within the Western foothills. And we've got kind of some fee ranges. And again, this is a very high level feasibility driven exercise, of course, with some placeholder costs for some of these projects that need to be looked at more carefully. But if you were to build just the fire access improvements, so really structure it just around that initial $20 million worth of 11 capital projects for fire access, we estimate that you could justify an impact fee of up to $15,000 per dwelling unit. Probably not going to want to go there. But the main reason for that is that those projects are really driven towards providing fire access. So a lot of those kind of haircuts that we take for typical impact fee programs that are more mobility driven, they're not taken in this case. And so that's why the fee ranges can be so high. If you were to fund just the multimodal improvements, so just the 9 million of kind of complete streets projects, that's actually not adding a lot there. Those complete streets improvements, when we recognize the mixture of existing and future users, and we kind of take some of the haircuts that are prescribed by state law, that's really just adding $1,500 per dwelling unit. So when we think about a combined impact fee program, your range is probably in that kind of $9,000 to $16,000. And again, that's the upper limit that you can justify. Council, of course, can select a lower rate. So the last slide I'm going to leave you with is just some conclusions that we drew from this study. First of all, reminding you that it is just a feasibility study. The numbers are imprecise at this point. Looking at the fire access improvements, we really did see a strong nexus between these projects and future development, and that's why you're able to pass on higher fees for those specific projects. If you're going to add the more robust multimodal improvements, you've got the benefit that you're providing better, higher quality amenity within the entirety of the Western foothills. But given that the benefit of those projects will be shared by both existing and future users, city is going to have to cover the costs that can't be covered by impact fees. And then last but not least, these rates per household really represent a maximum defensible rate. Council has the ultimate authority of what rate is charged up to that level. So that's all I have for tonight.
So information you want from us, you looking for dollar amounts today, or are you looking more of, should we go from a feasibility study to a full-blown study, recognizing that when that study came back, we would be looking at a range of rates and then we would adopt an ordinance that would, that's sort of what you're looking at?
It is. Before us tonight, it's a decision point. Do we want to move forward? And of course, when the ordinance came back, in a few months, you could still say, well, we've lost our appetite for this. But we would then move into an ordinance preparation with Fair and Peers, come back with some different rate options. You tonight could give us maybe kind of where you'd like to land. We would then, as an example, if you said we're not interested in 15,000, we want to be around 5,000, like what Broadview is paying now. We would then need to come back and also say, well, then that leaves a larger deficiency that the city's going to have to make up with other funding mechanisms, whether we bond more, or however we're going to make up those deficiencies, how we're going to fund these projects over the next 20 years. And so that's some of the things that we would study under any case. If the council says, nah, I'm not really interested, I don't like impact fees and I'm not really interested, then we would stop tonight and look for other funding options. The last thing I wanted to add though, so when you establish an impact fee system, when a developer goes in and builds a road within their project that's identified on the project list, they get a credit. So many of these roads will be built within development, and so the amount of road that they're building and the right-of-way that they're dedicating, they're going to get a credit back against their impact fees. So as an example, if a developer, if his units would have paid, let's say they would have paid $2 million in impact fees if he paid per unit, but his road that he was building in his project cost $6 million, he would not pay impact fees because he's actually exceeding the cost of what he would have paid. And so on the one hand, you can look at this and say, wow, every developer could pay $15,000 per unit, but or wherever we land. But in reality, most of the large projects are going to be building many of these roads and will receive an impact fee credit. What really the housing projects that will pay will be more of the projects that aren't on these access roads. They're the 4-lot short plats and maybe a little multifamily here, and those are the ones that would pay it, that would be primarily paying this fee. The developers are paying it, but they're paying it by building these improvements.
That makes it fair competition when you do it that way, and then obviously it would replace the Broadview fees now, correct?
Yes, that's the plan.
And can you help me a little bit more on where's this line at?
Excuse me?
Where's the line at? I got this map here, but
Oh.
where is it?
I think it's
Where's it going to impact? If
No.
this is a,
western to the western to the west.
Yeah, so it's west, everything west of Western, and then number 2 Canyon Road on the south and the Wenatchee River on the north.
so
Steve,
that's
that-
not all in this map.
It's more than it's more than this map.
Yeah, it's more than this map. Okay.
There are, right, so I don't have a number 2 Canyon, but there are no other road connections. I see what you're saying, the property would be impacted.
Yes,
But there are, right, there's no other road connections south of 10B as shown on here.
okay.
So, yeah, just so for instance, there's a proposed development, we haven't got anywhere close to final for some condominiums up by the Schumann Tennis Club in Castle Rock Heights. If they end up with 30 lots and we had a $5,000, and they didn't have to build any roads that were these roads, they would pay in for each lot.
Are you referring to the proposed Queens?
Yes.
So that is outside of the study, that is outside of the western foothill, no?
It's
Inside, okay.
It's inside, 'cause number, just the side of number 2
Okay.
Canyon Road, so.
Mayor, just a couple other thoughts is, first of all, another funding mechanism that really can be used by developers is local improvement districts, where they petition the city to build roads and improvements that help the entire area or a bigger area. I think one of the keys here is we know that these roads and these facilities cross many different properties, and there's benefit to everybody. We learned that in 2015 with the fires, right? And so facilitating a method to build these roads really requires the city to be involved in it. A developer can't. It's very hard for a developer to do off-site improvements on somebody else's property. But a city has those tools to do that. So part of the impact fees system allows for orderly development, the progression of development, and the provision of those services, so the entire area benefits.
So my gut reaction is I'm fine with it, and I'm in that sort of $5,000 to $7,500 range is sort of what I'm thinking something like this would sort of fall. But I don't get to vote.
But do they run, you're going to run some more numbers, or are these?
So at this point is,
We just-
are you okay with impact fees? Do you want to get the analysis? Because
I
we're
want
going to
the
start spending
analysis.
some money to do the next round, and then is there a range that you're comfortable in, or we can deal that later? So-
I want to see the analysis before I determine the range
Okay.
that I'm comfortable with.
I agree with him.
Yeah.
That's rare that everyone agrees with you. This is like.
It's my lucky day.
Yeah, let's see where the.
Okay,
Let's
so
do
I
the
think go
analysis.
forward and give us some ranges, and I'm guessing the $15,000 range probably isn't going to be acceptable, so I'd look for something less than that.
Wow.
Couple of months?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. All right, thanks, Kendra. Thanks, Rob. All right, so action items, we're going to do the first action item, which is letter K, which is a carryover of our homeless grant funding recommendations. So Glenn, you want to come up and do that? And I think for those in the audience, I think if anybody wants to comment, I'll take some public comment on this particular issue. I think we took some the last time we dealt with this. So I'll turn over to Glenn, and if you guys remember correctly, we did some allocations, I don't know, a month or so ago, and we held back about $250,000 in waiting for some proposals that would be around some capital projects, most low barrier shelter stuff. And we said, if we don't get it, then let's have staff look at how to redo that. So the committee met again. The recommendation was to not, there was like one capital project we don't feel that met the needs, so we reallocated another $250,000 amongst those providers, same names you saw a month or so ago. So Glenn, I'll tee that up for you, and you can sort of go through how the process went.
Perfect. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So as the mayor mentioned, the committee reviewed the proposal and appreciated the submittal, but believed that it wasn't fully developed in meeting the request for proposal. So staff did do a recommendation sort of along 2 lines for the funds, and there was $250,000 available for capital projects and $100,000 available for the sort of the more the administration side, should we have received a low barrier shelter proposal. So $350,000 was available. Staff did a recommendation, and it sort of fell under two categories. One, we knew that there were still some deficiencies. As you recall, when we met with you last time, we were trying to just have programs not take a step back as much as possible. And then that's essentially what the council adopted in the last funding. But we knew there were still some funding deficiencies and gaps for a variety of reasons, and I can touch on some of those. And then we also knew that there were some small program improvements that the steering committee, cities, counties were very supportive of that didn't get funded as well. And so the package as a whole took in $250,000, and additionally of the low barrier shelter operations, the original $100,000 took, let's see here, $25,600 of that and used it as well, and allocated it in the recommendation before you. And just going quickly, would the council like me to go through and just do a quick synopsis of each of the funding categories funded, recommended for funding?
I would do it quickly, yeah.
Quickly, okay. So community action is recommended to include administrative funding. They had none for all the fundings that they administer. They previously had some, so this would rectify that. The voluntary attorney services, which provide services for eviction prevention, had a proposal to increase their services, which will, everybody believes would be a great addition and be very helpful. Upper Valley Mend was proposing for some expanded case expansion, case management expansion, which was supported by all. The Women's Resource Center had funding deficiencies for the Bruce Transitional Shelter, and then also a deficiency due to United Way funding shortfall. That was recommended to be filled. The YWCA had a funding shortfall and potentially was at risk for losing one of our few emergency shelters. So the support was to backfill that. Upper Valley Mend was looking for some expanded case management. SAGE Coordinated Entry Program had a funding shortfall of $3,000. We currently have a diversion fund through our coordinated entry program as people call in. It's a very small amount, $10,000. We wanted to expand that. For example, it can be something simple like providing, they have a plan in place where somewhere where they can go. Maybe they don't have a bus ticket to get to their parents or uncle. So expanding that by $15,000 was proposed. Chelan Valley Hope had a proposal for some expanded prevention services in the Chelan area, and then leaving the remaining $74,400 for low barrier shelter operations to pool for future consideration and at a later date. And that was unanimously recommended for approval by the steering committee, which is now the Chelan Douglas Homeless Task Force. And stand for any questions you might have.
Citizens of the council? Any member of the audience wish to address the council on this item? I know we did take some public comment last time. If anybody wishes to address the council on this particular item, I'd take comment if anyone was interested. Seeing no takers, I'll turn it over to the council for any action they may be willing to take.
Your Honor, I make a motion for the city council to accept the steering committee's recommendations and authorize the mayor to amend the grant agreement between the Department of Commerce and the City of Wenatchee for the Consolidated Homeless Housing and Essential Needs Grant to support the recommendations outlined above, and also enter into 2-year grant agreements with the subgrantees as recommended above by the Homeless Steering Committee.
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Kulas, second by Councilmember Harold to accept the steering committee's recommendations and authorize the mayor to amend the grant agreements between the Department of Commerce and the City of Wenatchee for Consolidated Homeless Housing and Essential Needs Grant. Support the recommendations outlined and enter into 2-year grant agreements with subgrantees as recommended above by the Homeless Steering Committee. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thanks, Glenn. Good conclusion to a very long process, and thanks to Sandra and her team and Oliver and you for all that work.
Yeah, but there's some more.
All right, David, cemetery, strategic plan.
Of course, they think.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Dave Erickson, Parks Recreation Director for the city. This evening, I'm requesting a motion to approve the cemetery strategic plan as Appendix D of our Parks and Recreation Open Space Plan. This is kind of similar to what we did back in the arts program back in about 2015, I believe it was. And then in 2023, when we go to update the Parks and Recreation Open Space Plan, we would fold all this information into the actual plan document itself. So it's kind of that first step in that process. We're hoping that this would be a living document and provide some broad goals and objectives and kind of away from the day-to-day operations.
There was no pun intended.
Living document?
Yeah, thanks. No rim shot for that one. So this document was developed over several months, started last year, and included discussions with staff, a review of current industry standards and practices, and also 23 other municipally operated cemeteries around the state. The Arts Rec and Park Commission reviewed the plan at their November 2018 meeting, January and March of 2019, and then unanimously recommended it for approval at their July meeting this year. And our hope is that we'll be able to use this document as a tool to enhance our ability to go out and obtain some grant funding, like the application that we're currently working on to try to renovate the Clark Mausoleum, which is in a state of disrepair.
You always explain things well, so I get a bigger picture of it. Mayor, I'm going to make a motion for the city council to approve the cemetery strategic plan as Appendix D of the 2018 through 24 Parks Recreation Open Space Comprehensive Plan.
Second.
A motion by Councilmember Poyer, second by Councilmember Bailey to approve the cemetery strategic plan as Appendix D of the 2018 through 2024 Parks Rec and Open Space Comp Plan. Discussion? Did you have more you wanted to say or not?
No, that'll work.
That was good. I thought it was a great job. As always, your comp plans are very thorough and
Yeah, I had one question though on the taking non-resident and people. Is there any way we can restrict that just to citizens of the city?
You know, we had that discussion when we were looking at fees with the cemetery staff too, and we're looking at either resident, non-resident fees. And they found that it was really problematic because you might have somebody who was a Wenatchee resident forever, you know, lived here from birth until 80, 90 years old, and then moved over across the river to live out their last days in an assisted living facility. And so then technically they would be a non-resident even though they've been in the city all their life. And so that was one of those things that, and it's hard to administer too.
Yeah.
So then they just said, no, let's just keep it kind of the way it is.
any other questions for David? If not, all those in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thanks,
Thank
David.
you.
All right, so we got Charlotte to come up and help us with some engineering and then award a contract for the Saddle Rock Phase 1 environmental removal. And then we've got Jacob coming in for a bunch of contracts. And then we've got Jeremy as well. So Charlotte, Saddle Rock remediation.
Yep, Charlotte Mitchell, Capital Projects Manager for Parks, Recreation, and Cultural Services. So this is for the Saddle Rock Project Phase 1. We put bids out and we got 2 bidders. The low bid was DW Excavation, which was quite a bit under our engineer's estimate. We just, we did a little more research and figured out that they are planning to do a more aggressive form of construction than we were being a bit conservative in our determination of how the construction would move forward. So we got a really good bid from them. So we're asking if we could award it to them. Any questions?
So project will start when, end when, that part of the trailhead will be closed for how long?
Right. So Saddle Rock will be closed probably starting a month from now once we get all the contracts signed and get everything moved. And we have 60 working days in the contract, but DW Excavation said they think they can get it done in 30. I wouldn't count on it, but that'd be great. But yeah, so we'll have Saddle Rock, Dry Gulch that side will be open, but Saddle Rock will be closed from the base to the top completely while we're doing construction.
From that side. If I go up Jacobson Preserve.
Right. If you go up Jacobson, at the top, you'll hit a sign that says, hey, we're closed from here on. So you can't make a loop out of it, but you'll be able to go in from the Jacobson side.
And thoughts about advanced notification at the parking lot to let folks know that this is going to happen?
Yeah, we have.
Because they're going to try to go by it anyway. But.
Right. But so we have been kind of getting the word out,
Yeah,
and we're
good.
going to do a big media push starting here shortly, assuming you allow us to move forward with the contract, then to let people know so we don't end up with too many people trailing past our construction.
Yeah, and great bid price. Engineer's estimate was $450.
Yeah, 450,000.
We're coming in at 300. So.
$299, wow.
Yeah, I don't want to go into super much details, but they're planning pretty aggressively. They're just going to bulldoze the road wider and take an end dump up there, like a normal dump truck. We weren't really sure that could be done because we're not truck drivers, and so we wanted to make sure that the project was biddable and doable. So we were, in our plans, geoengineers was planning to have rock trucks do the top 2 piles. And so that's the reason for the substantial difference in price.
Dump truck about anywhere, can't you?
Charlotte, where is all of this contaminated soil going to go?
It's going to the landfill.
We'll go to the sideline bill.
Yep, so we've already got approval and everything. They know what's coming to them, and yeah, we're good to go on that. So, and this is just phase 1, so we're removing the 4 lower. We were told by Ecology that we're getting the phase 2 funding, so then that will happen hopefully next year. And this project is running well under budget, so hopefully we'll just take that any extra money from this project and roll it into phase 2. So.
Good.
All right, I'd entertain a motion if we had one.
Well, Your Honor, I'd move for approval to sign a contract for construction of the Saddle Rock Phase 1 interim removal action. Authorizing the mayor to sign a standard construction contract with DW Excavation, Inc. In the amount of $299,344.77 for construction of the Saddle Rock Phase 1 interim removal action project.
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Bailey, second by Councilmember Esparza to authorize the mayor to sign a standard construction contract with DW Excavation, Inc. in the amount of $299,344.77 for construction of the Saddle Rock Phase 1 interim removal action project. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. And apparently we need an engineer to make sure we're doing this correctly.
Well, part of this project includes some real-time testing with this device called an XRF. It tells you it's in the field, and you just put a little dirt sample in it and tells you what the arsenic content is of the area of the soil that you're testing. So then that's how we're going to guide our construction. So I am not an expert in this, and so we're hoping to have geoengineers. They're the ones that originally have done this design work. They've done a really great job. In a very short amount of time, they've gotten through a lot of Department of Ecology red tape. So I would like to have them for the construction to do the testing in real time and guide some of the construction. I'll be doing the overall construction management, but they will be doing assistance in testing.
So they're essentially on site to define the limits.
Right, pretty much.
Define the limits
We're going to have the contractor dig to where they think the limits are, and then we'll test, and then we can either say, you need to go a little more, or yeah, we're good.
Yeah.
All right, any questions for Charlotte? If not, I'd entertain a motion.
Your Honor, I move for City Council to authorize the mayor to sign a contract amendment with Geoengineers Incorporated in the amount of $120,807 for Saddle Rock Phase 1 interim removal action project.
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Harold, second by Councilmember Markart to authorize the mayor to sign a contract amendment with Geoengineers, Inc. in the amount of $120,807 for Saddle Rock Phase 1 interim removal action project. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Charlotte.
Thank you.
All right. Sanitary sewer project. Poplar Avenue, Jeremy, how are you today?
Doing well. Thank you. Appreciate it. So I'm here to talk to you today. Oh, sorry. Jeremy Hoover, Senior Engineer, City of Wenatchee. I'm here to talk to you today about the Poplar Avenue Sewer Project. It's an infill project a little bit south between Springwater and Westwood, somewhat in the middle northern portion of the city. We have no sewer there. Everybody there is on a septic system, and we're looking to install approximately 335 feet of 8-inch sewer and about half a dozen side services. That will be able to not only serve the existing residents, but there's a large portion of land on the west side of the road that will be able to connect to the sewer for potential development at some point when they so choose. So this project was put out to bid, and the engineer's estimate was about $202,000. We got some really good bids on it. We had 6 contractors bid on the project, and the low bid was DJB Construction at $166,000 before tax, $180,000 after tax. So we got some really good dollar values on this project. It's a 30-day construction project that we're hoping to have done and paved well before the snow flies. And we're looking at, if you look at the green lines on your package submittal, the entire roadway will be repaved in those sections. We're not just going to be doing a trench patch because the asphalt's pretty much garbage right there. Nothing will stand up after the excavators get on it. It'll just be spider cracked and garbage, so we're going to go ahead and repave the whole thing.
So why is there not a light green line all the way going down the street?
Because we don't need a sewer there. With the limits that are shown, we're able to serve everybody. The portion that's at Westwood, that's really only to serve the one property that's on the northwest corner there.
So so this middle line then goes down to the other street?
The one that's on the north side drains to a sewer that was put in by that small development that's on the southeast corner of Poplar and Springwater.
I got it.
So we don't have to get into Springwater. That's even better.
Okay.
And Poplar in that location does not have curb gutter and sidewalk,
No,
correct?
no curb gutter and
So
sidewalk.
we're just restoring the pavement.
Correct.
Yeah.
3 inches of asphalt.
Okay. Keep expanding our sewer. Any questions for Jeremy? If not, I'd entertain a motion.
Is there, I don't even know why I'm coming up with this in my head. Is on Poplar, is there like across the street county? Or
I believe this is all within city limits. I think
City.
Springwater is
All
also
city?
city limits, or is within city limits.
It was.
it was, okay,
Yeah, that's hence no curb gutter and sidewalk.
thank you.
Okay, or storm drain or sewer.
Okay.
Your Honor, I'll make a motion for City Council to award the contract for construction of the Poplar Avenue Sanitary Sewer Extension Project number 1902 to DJB Construction in the amount of $180,112.02, and further authorize the mayor to sign the construction contract.
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Esparza, second by Councilmember Harold to award the contract for construction of the Poplar Avenue Sanitary Sewer Extension Project number 1902 to DJB Construction in the amount of $180,112.02, and further authorize the mayor to sign the construction contract. Discussion.
I was wondering why we're not going to be doing the sidewalks and the gutters while we're having this tore up.
The sewer fund is what's paying for this project. Like I mentioned, it's an infill job. It's not part of the current capital improvements plan to go in and put sidewalk, curb, and gutter out there.
Okay. So you would have to have our general fund do that. What sidewalks and storm going to cost on Poplar? 750 grand?
The stormwater is already in place.
Excuse me, sidewalks, 500 grand, 600 grand? Every bit of that. So two city blocks.
Grand total, it's probably going to be about 500 or 600 feet from Springwater to Wedgwood.
Yeah, both sides of the road?
I would imagine one side of the road is going to be done by folks dividing their property.
Well, you know that ain't happened for a long time.
There is a little bit
You
of
know who the
sidewalk.
property owner is to the left, don't you?
We'll probably at least 400,000 in
He doesn't like to give estimates on the fly. So,
You're going to be.
and with all the meeting interest for general fund, it'd be nice to do it now, but it's just. General fund.
All right, any questions for staff? All right, then all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thanks, Jeremy.
Thank you.
All right, so now we have, I think, 6 sort of projects that are in some form or another of ready to go. So Jeremy Jacob will work our way through it. And
First Street.
lots of good projects in the pipeline.
What's that?
So
Where traffic signals and license plate from Miller to the Washington Bridge.
Really? Traffic, so we're doing like roundabouts?
Mhm.
No, just a slow traffic. Yeah.
Okay, good deal. Thank you. Okay, Jacob Heiler, Engineering Services Manager, here to talk about, like the Mayor said, 6 different projects that we intend to build over the next 2 years. The reason I'm here tonight for all of these is in order for us to be able to deliver on the schedule that we're proposing, we'll need to get started this year with some of the survey work, getting an engineer on board, or at least getting, if we're doing it in-house, having our folks kind of get their feet wet on these projects. So the first one I'm here to talk about is the First Street Bikeway. So we applied for a grant through the WashDOT Local Programs Pedestrian and Bicycle Program last spring, and the city was awarded funding as of this summer. So the city received a grant for $342,800 to improve First Street between Miller and Wenatchee Avenue with the intent of providing some traffic calming and then increasing the safety for bicyclists in that area. So we're going to do this through 2 different methods. One on the section of the corridor between Miller and Chelan. We're proposing to do they're called sharrows, but where the bike is sharing the lane with traffic. And then at the intersections, we're proposing to do traffic circles like you'd see in residential neighborhoods throughout a lot of Seattle. There's a graphic up there that shows what we'd be proposing at those intersections. They're very effective in terms of slowing traffic down, and the slower traffic is, the more comfortable it's going to be for a bicyclist. So that's the concept, like I said, between Miller and Chelan. Between Chelan and Wenatchee Avenue, we'd be looking to put in separated bike facilities. So we'd restripe the road to take parking away on the south side, and then install bike lanes with buffers so that bicyclists are completely separated from that or from traffic. So in terms of a schedule, we'd be looking to build that project in 2021, like I said, with some design and surveying starting this year.
Because of the right turn.
And all of that funding is coming out of our grant program.
So the good news is no match for the city. Not saying it's bad news, but as we talked about at Finance Committee today, I think if we say yes, you're committed to traffic circles, I guess, if you will, down First Street, which is sort of a new concept to the city of Wenatchee. So out of full disclosure, I think if we're moving forward, you're anticipating traffic circles down First Street. I think they're going to be wonderful. That's a street I drive regularly, and I think slowing people down on that stretch is a good thing, and I think helping the bikers get down over the overpass is a good thing. But just want to be clear to you that this is different than what we've seen in our city before.
The only question I guess I would have, Jacob, is First Street designated as an arterial?
It is not. I believe it's a collector, but I'd have to go back and double check that.
Because your example and the picture you're showing there, and I've driven around Seattle quite a bit, and I fully support traffic circles in residential areas. I'm a little nervous about sticking it basically on a major street that is used, and that's why I asked the question of collect, arterial collectors, whatever. But it gets a lot of traffic, and calming it down, I don't have a problem with that either. It just it seems like this is not as an appropriate place to put those as it would be in for example, like on my street.
Right.
Which is a drag strip, and you stick a couple of those on that upper end of Kittitas, and it probably would deter some of the things that go on there. But that's clearly a residential street, not something like First Street.
Right, and so as part of this, we're trying to find a balance. Obviously, we want to improve bicycle connectivity from east to west. With the pedestrian bridge being at the bottom of First Street is certainly the logical connection and place to try to prioritize that. But you're right, it would probably change some traffic patterns. People would use Washington more or head north of there, so.
Yeah, I think I'll use Washington more. That's a street I regularly drive. I think I'll use Washington more. It's still an area where people park on the sidewalks all the way up and down the street. I think you're taking, there's only parking on one side of the street now, and that's going to stay, I think, isn't it?
Yeah, we would not change any parking configurations between Miller and Chelan.
So now that, how's the striping going to work for the westbound bike lanes in this?
Between the avenue and Chelan.
Miller.
So we wouldn't be striping other than the Shero symbols west of Chelan.
So will bikes be able to share the sidewalk with the cars that are on the side? No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, the parked cars put a bike farther out into the road. But the benefit of this is it'd slow the cars down.
Well, two things. It'll slow cars down and people will go a different direction, right? I'll probably go over to Washington or Fifth more and use First less, which is okay. Those streets are designed for that. First really isn't. I'm sort of excited to see what this would look like. And I get the concern, Jim, because this is sort of new to all of us and
the concept I have no problem with. It's just that
right.
being that street versus what I would think of as a truly residential street.
Right.
I think the good news about it is it'll take that street and instead of making it like a highway straight shot through, maybe it'll slow it down enough where it becomes more of a residential area and give more ambiance to the neighborhood as well.
That's assuming it's not residential, because we don't know yet.
We what?
We don't know yet.
Yeah, we don't know the
Residential
internal
rate
designation.
or-
Yeah, right. I think we know how it's practically being used.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a medium to higher density residential area.
Yeah.
But it's clearly not functioning like Fifth Street or Washington in terms of its width, in terms of it needs to be quite a bit less than that.
And its speed limit is posted at 25. Yeah. The others are 30.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you can go 70.
Yeah.
I'm good with it. I like it. There's 7 of them coming in, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah, every block. Right. Going down to the president's name just in the finance committee, right? Franklin, Emerson, Garfield, Cleveland, Buchanan. I couldn't get all the names right.
Yeah, Emerson wasn't.
My fear is the cars, they don't stop.
You slipped in there.
Franklin wasn't either.
You end up squeezing in there with the car.
He's on a $20 bill though, isn't he? Got to be important, whatever it is.
And
I mean,
20.
All right, so I just turn over to council for any action that they may be willing to take.
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion for the city council to approve the proposed budget city project 1914.
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Markart, second by Councilmember Poyer to approve the proposed budget for City Project 1914. First Street Bikeway Project. Discussion. Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay. Miller Street School Zone.
Miller Street School Zone. So similar to the First Street Bikeway, we applied for a grant through the WashDOT local program Safe Route to School program last spring, and funding came through this summer. We'd be looking, or we were awarded $123,000 worth of Safe Routes to School money, and we expect that to be enough to fund this project entirely. So the concept is we've got it in 2 different locations. The first one you can see on the page here. We'd be putting in a 20-mile-an-hour school zone with the flashing lights to indicate when that applies, as well as a radar speed feedback sign on Miller near Cherry and Red Apple Road, which would cover a school zone between the high school and Pioneer Middle School. The second aspect of this project is installing rapid flash beacons at the intersection of Red Apple Road and Okanagan, which is one of the priorities of the Wenatchee School District in terms of improvements to city right-of-way. So, in terms of schedule, we'd again be looking to kick that off this fall with construction scheduled for next year.
All right, any questions for Jacob? If not, I'd entertain a motion.
Your Honor, I move for City Council to approve the proposed budget for city project number 1915.
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Harold, second by Councilmember Esparza to approve the proposed budget for City Project 1915, the Miller School Zone and Okanagan Crossing Improvements Project. Discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Okay. I sound like a broken record here, but
Got
the city
the,
applied for some Safe Routes to School funding.
We got the Mark Kulas circle here, don't we? Is this the one you've been talking about for a while?
We're about 16 years.
Yeah,
Well, we're finally going to make good on it.
we're going to make good on it.
So the city was awarded Safe Routes to School funding this summer for a project on Met House Street between Crawford Avenue and Marr. In scoping this project, more recently, we found that the city's water comprehensive plan also includes a project to replace a water line between Marjo and Lincoln on Met House Street. And so what we are proposing now is to extend the project beyond what's shown on this graphic, another block to the north. So we'd be restriping Met House Street between Crawford and Lincoln, as well as overlaying to include a bike lane on each side. What that results in is taking away parking on the west side of the road. And in addition to that, installing a mini roundabout at the intersection of Crawford and Met Howe. In terms of schedule, we'd be looking to, once again, start off this year, bulk of the design and some right-of-way acquisition next year, with construction scheduled for 2021. Overall, it's about a $1.365 million project, a little shy of $800,000 of which would be funded through our Safe Routes to School grant. The water fund would chip in for its portion of the water line replacement, and the rest would be made up of the streets or the city's arterial and overlay fund.
Seems like a really great project.
Your Honor, I make a motion for the city council to approve the proposed budget for City Project 1916.
Second?
Motion by Councilmember Kulas, second by Councilmember Bailey to have the city council approve the proposed budget for City Project 1916, the Met House Street improvements. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. And Maple Street.
Okay, on to a non-grant funded project. So as you heard earlier tonight, the city is looking into impact fees in the Western Foothills due to some proposed development in that area. This project would provide access to one of the larger developments that's proposed. If you're driving Maple Street to the west, you can tell from Gabriella down to Western, everything's improved with curb gutter sidewalk, what we typically define as an urban standard. As soon as you go west of Gabriella, it changes drastically in terms of the condition of the roadway and the amenities that are provided. So what we'd be looking for in this project is to install curb gutter and sidewalk, as well as storm drainage and a sanitary sewer line on Maple Street from Gabriella up to the irrigation canal, at which point the proposed development west of the canal would rebuild the bridge and then the roads heading west of there. So in terms of a schedule for this one, again, we'd be starting off survey and some preliminary engineering work this year, right-of-way acquisition planned for next year, and then construction in 2021. At this point, we are expecting to use bond proceeds to fund this project. But as discussed in finance, I think we've got a little bit of work to define exactly what fund that comes out of. So
How much additional right-of-way needs to be obtained?
quite a bit. We've got some real challenges with right-of-way in this area based on where homes are and their proximity to what our proposed improvements would be. We don't have a defined section as of yet, but the right-of-way aspect of this project will be challenging.
I think there's some thought as it gets closer to the ditch and you see it sort of, there's a house there that looks like the sidewalk's over the top of the roof. I think there's some talk of having the road angle to the south at that point and have the bridge go across at an angle. I think is some of the preliminary discussion, but I don't think we're quite there yet.
Yeah, there's certainly some ideas we need to flush out in a preliminary engineering process. This concept that's shown here is certainly a 30,000 foot level of concept and estimate.
So you're still contemplating a 60-foot right-of-way width through there?
Well,
As opposed to an alternative section?
we're already relatively narrow on the section that's shown here. I believe there are 11-foot lanes with 5-foot bike lanes, no planar strip, so significantly narrower than what Maple is to the east. But going beyond that, you wouldn't want to skinny things up too much more.
And I think as we go forward, I think the talk at finance was start with some of the survey work, figure out where in terms of the right-of-way acquisitions and those sorts of things, continue to monitor the triad development. If it looks like it's going to go. If it looks like it's going to stop, or we're not going to get a deal, then we can stop and revisit and, hey, do you want to keep going? How far do you want to take the project? So this is one, though, if we're going to get to the 2021 timeframe, which is a short 2 years away, we need to get started probably yesterday. So this is one that, again, if things change, we'll certainly come back and talk to the council about at what point do we stop and take a look at it. This is all of our general fund or utility funds here, so we really have the ability to sort of stop and decide exactly how far we go with this.
Yeah, you don't really have a lot of room to,
Yeah.
you're drawing a straight line there, yeah, it goes right into through the house, but then if you bend it, you're gonna be quite a ways into the driveway, the one across the street, so you really have a.
Well, the one across the street, there's a proposed 20-unit, 3-story condos that are currently been proposed and been sitting on planning's desk, waiting for more information from the developer for.
So that house would go away?
I'm on the left, I'm on the south side.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I don't believe that house would go away, but all that bare ground there.
Yeah.
So, if they haven't come in yet, if you turn the road a little bit, then that access could come in at an angle, and I don't know, there's probably some stuff they could do in there.
Yeah, I understand that, but I'm saying if you put that bend in there, it's gonna take that driveway. So you really have a real narrow window to try and squeeze through there.
We do, and as as you mentioned, the further you go south, the more you impact that property. So there's no perfect solution to the alignment of this roadway, but without putting some more time and thought into it, we're
Now, going into the development on the other side, across the canal over there, that's a triad?
Yep.
Yeah. So what kind of street configuration are we looking at on over there?
Standard road width.
Okay, so you're going to come out of a wider street into a narrower street and then back up into a bigger street?
I don't think it'll be any wider than, this one's scheduled, I look at the cross section, is 50 feet, 25 all the way to the end, so 50 feet.
What we're envisioning is that we have a wide section, sorry, Jacob.
No, you're good.
But we have a wide section on Maple that will go toward Western. We get into some right-of-way constraints in here. We may have to narrow the road, think of it as traffic calming. And then when we get across the canal, go back to our collector standard. So maybe we have to have less area for snow, or maybe we aren't able to do a bike lane right through here. We also talked about, well, could we live with a narrower section through here until this property redevelops, or somebody tears that house down? So, this is all the things that we're going to vet out in
Yeah.
the study. And I believe this will be the main feed into that neighborhood, yes. Isn't the main difference between the lower sections, there won't be parking? Yeah, we would eliminate parking.
Yeah, there will be. Oh, yes, there will be.
Okay.
The other thing that this doesn't
I'm
represent.
just looking at it as a, becomes a choke point. You can call it traffic calming if you want, but it becomes a choke point.
Yeah.
Well, it's true. We also know the grades coming from here down to Western, it's got a pretty steep fall. We do want to try to, we know that width brings about speed. The narrower we keep our sections, the slower people will drive. And so we do want to consider that in the design. This layout didn't consider the redevelopment proposed here on it's owned by Mr. Wheeler. And so he actually has to dedicate 15 feet, and that wasn't represented on this high flyover drawing in RH2. So we already know that these improvements would slide back 15 feet to the side.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, any other questions for staff? If not, I would entertain a motion.
Your Honor, I'll make a motion for City Council to approve the proposed budget for City Project 1917.
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Esparza, second by Councilmember Markart to approve the proposed budget for City Project 1917 Maple Street improvements. Discussion. Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Okay.
And then a water line.
Water line. So the city's water comprehensive plan, we have two projects identified, one on First Street and one on 8th Street to replace the existing AC line that currently feeds the properties along there. And so what we are looking to do, the exhibit here just shows 8th Street. First Street is a pretty standard replacement, more or less in the same alignment. On 8th Street, we've got some more complexity. And so as you can see, 8th Street is the middle portion of the drawing here. And what we would be looking to do is install a new water line in 8th Street between Ramona and Miller. And then switch the water services that currently exist in the alleys, both north and south of 8th Street. So currently, homes on the south side of 9th Street, north side of 8th Street, south side of 8th Street, and north side of 7th Street are all fed off of those alleys. Our goal is to decommission the water lines that are currently in those alleyways, and then, as I said, bring services out to the front of the properties. So connect homes on 9th Street to the water line on 9th Street, connect homes that are served by the alley on 7th Street to the water main on 7th Street, and then reconfigure the services to connect to the front of the properties on 8th Street. Based on the fact that those services do exist in the back of the homes, we will have a lot of research to do in terms of how to make those connections. But without getting started, we'll not know. So we're here tonight to try to get a budget approved in order to get a consulting firm on board and get the project started. We're hoping to construct next year, but because of the complexities involved, we're not ready to fully commit to that. So as I said, we'll charge ahead with the intention of building next year, but that could slide to 2021 if we run into a lot of issues. So.
And the reason is because the line is really old, or is the reason we just don't like having them in alleyways?
It's
Or both?
twofold. One, the line is asbestos concrete, which is a huge maintenance issue for our crew if it were to break. So our goal is to get rid of the AC water lines that currently exist in the city. This would take care of two of the ones that, or actually three, both alleyways and then First Street. And then in addition to that, typically homes are fed off of the services are off the front of the homes, which our crews are more accustomed to working with. So both factor into that.
How much of that AC is in the city? Is this going to get rid of it, or?
I'd have to go back and look. I'm not sure. This, as I mentioned, this will take care of a good chunk of it. The water line piece of Met House Street is another one that's currently AC that will be eliminating as part of the Met House project that we discussed earlier. Our water crew would know better than me how much is left after we're done with these.
I think from the water comp plan, the remaining AC main was relatively low for our city. So I think these projects off, we're going to be close to being ready for the rest of it.
Is there any significant health issue? I mean, say asbestos, everybody ears perk up. Is there a liner in there so that there's no asbestos erosion on there, or is it?
Inside the pipe, I believe there's a concrete liner, which is the asbestos concrete aspect of it. But as I mentioned, if it were to break, our crews are working. Typically, it involves cutting out a section of line and replacing, which has its health concerns.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. Moon suit time?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So it doesn't, as far as I've been told, it doesn't, in terms of the services that we currently have, we don't have a health concern there. But it's the upkeep and maintenance of that line that's the bigger concern for us.
All right, any questions for Jacob? If not, I'd entertain a motion.
I'd like to make a motion for City Council to approve the proposed budget for City Project 1918.
Second?
A motion by Councilmember Markart, second by Councilmember Harold to approve the proposed budget for City Project 1918, the 2020 AC Water Main Replacement Project. Discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. And finally, the Elliott Street pedestrian connection.
Last
Jacob.
one. So the city received a TIB Complete Streets grant in the amount of $700,000, which includes a list of different projects that we'd like to accomplish between now and 2021. I'm sure I'll be back to talk about several others, but this is the first one that we're kicking off. So the city currently has a section of unimproved right-of-way on Elliott between 2nd and 3rd. This project would install a 10-foot multi-use path, as well as lighting and some aesthetic improvements between 2nd and 3rd. In terms of cost, we'd be looking at about $160,000, and then a construction timeline of next summer. It would be fully funded through our Complete Streets grant, and this project's been identified on the city's transportation improvement plan for quite some time now. So we're excited to make some improvements here and get that off the list.
I walk a lot in that area, and I look forward to being able to walk through there. How much right-of-way does the city have there?
I believe it varies, but enough to construct this
I think
project.
we have half a width. I think we have 30 feet in there.
So not
That
enough
sounds
to
correct.
actually put full circulation through there.
Not without further right-of-way acquisition.
I was just curious because we've been thwarted in our long-term planning efforts to have Pershing and Popular go through. And this would, if it were vehicular, it would at least connect Cherry to be a connection between Cherry and Fifth. One of my curiosities is winter maintenance.
Yeah, there's anytime you add infrastructure, whether it's a road or a pathway or what have you, there's certainly maintenance that's associated with that.
So would we use one of our smaller plow trucks to
A pickup truck would fit on a 10-foot multi-use path.
through there?
Outside of the wintertime, or outside of access for our own vehicles, we'd have bollards on either end to keep
Yeah.
cars from navigating through there.
Okay.
I would, at first glance, I would wonder whether that was possible to be treated like a sidewalk with all the adjacent property. Even I was talking about that.
Well, I was wondering about the same with the pathway that was been constructed on the Pershing alignment between Orchard and Fifth, or Orchard and what is it, Fourth, Third.
I know this is a bit of a tough area. I think maybe 4 or 5 years ago, if you remember when you came in by the coffee stand there, it was just like the road stopped. And we owned the right of way, so we took the barriers off and paved the road down to, I guess, Third, so it went from Fifth to Fourth to Third. And the neighbors came unglued. They were livid that we would remove our barriers and fix the street and allow for cars to drive. But we just ripped the Band-Aid off and did it. I think it's all sort of calmed down now. It would take some more work to say, oh, and by the way, we're going to widen the full width. And I agree with you, Mark. It should eventually be there. And maybe this is a stepping stone to getting them to understand that having people going by their front of their house is not a bad thing.
Well, there's a number of, Elliott and Pershing, and some of these streets that are kind of half streets or sort of half streets and misaligned. I don't know who was smoking what when they drew the lines on here, but some of those streets are, I mean, they're basically almost not, shouldn't be used as streets.
You've been the longest one on the city council.
He wasn't on in the early 1900s, though. Again, I think this is a nice improvement. I think it hopefully.
Well, it's a start anyway.
Getting pedestrians and people walking to the college, and I know they've had some issues with some drug use back in there, and I think cleaning this up and getting some lights is going to be a nice first step.
Your Honor, I make a motion for the city council to approve the proposed budget for city project SW19-08.
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Kulas, second by Councilmember Bailey, to approve the proposed budget for city project SW 1908, the Elliott Avenue multi-use pathway. Discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. And I believe, is this one of the ones, Mr. Kulas, that your TIB board was on? So just get a chance to thank Mark. He sits on the TIB board representing counties, I believe, county planners, Eastern Washington. We've taken care of the homeless stuff, so our next item, thanks, Jacob. Thank you for all of that work.
Thank you.
Next item is a public hearing item, unless you want to take a quick break. If I'm good, should we keep going? All right. Public hearing
Download my
item
PowerPoint, so you might have a minute.
for Brooklyn and her CDBG 2019 Annual Action Plan.
I have to download my PowerPoint, so it might be worth taking a second.
How long does it take?
I don't know. I don't usually get watched when I sign in, so. Oh, gosh.
That sounds good.
Yeah, but no one's even talking, so.
We're just watching you.
Pressure's
Feel
on.
it. I know. It's opening.
Okay, now she's ready.
Okay.
You need.
Yeah.
Sorry, Mr. Bailey, about the comment.
Oh, that, okay.
But you started it. It was very appropriate what you said, though.
Okay.
Oh, there we are. All right, Brooklyn.
Okay. Good evening, Brooklyn Holton, Housing and Community Planner. We have in front of you the 2019 Community Development Block Grant Annual Action Plan. So this is a plan that comes to you guys each year as the annual plan of our 5-year consolidated plan. It'll be the last one of this current consolidated plan because that'll be updated for 2020. And so here, a little presentation. So just kind of a recap. The yellow area is our CDBG target area. This is the area that we prioritize spending CDBG funding in. We're able to spend it in anywhere in the city, but this is where we've identified those that have the most need.
And can you go back?
Oh, yeah.
To help us out, what's the northerly boundary?
Tacoma? No, that was the old one. Oh, my gosh.
That's either Maple.
I want to say that.
There's a section to the
Oh my
north
gosh.
that's, that fits
Is
it.
There's no street name. This is a really old map.
Oh,
I can double check that to tell you.
Well, I'm just,
Well, there's the cemetery, I think.
no,
Isn't it?
That could be McKittrick. I mean, there's some areas down in there that.
it's Springwater, is it not?
Is it Springwater? Okay.
Okay, Springwater, and then that rectangle on the south is Fifth Street.
Yep.
Okay,
Thanks.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah. We didn't choose this
right.
Yeah, someone chose it for
weird,
us.
yeah. I wouldn't have minded a
Thank
more
you.
flush. Yeah. Thanks for the help. Can I go on?
Please.
So the objectives outlined in our current consolidated plan that we then try and focus activities on in our annual action plan are to preserve and improve neighborhoods. You've traditionally seen that through our sidewalk efforts, and then our code enforcement program by supporting our code enforcement officers and compliance on behalf of our residents with an emphasis on education and voluntary compliance. Support public services, so just mentioned code enforcement. And then developing economic opportunity, which the literacy training that we do with the Community Action Council is also considered a public service. So it kind of reaches both of those. But those have been our main focuses over the last, what would have been 5 years, but is now a 7-year consolidated plan. We do identify reducing homelessness as a priority, but the plan just references the plan to end homelessness that Oliver and Sandra work on. And then, so this is the budget for the 2019, can I move this? 2019 projects and activities. So in 2017, in our annual action plan, we adopted what's called a pre-award cost that we dedicated both 2018 and 2019 funding to help complete the Chelan Avenue project early. The funding for that was provided also by some TBD, the 10% for pedestrian infrastructure, and that allowed some of the 2019 funds that would have been allocated to that project to become available. We also, the last 2 years, have gotten around $150,000 in program income from rehab loan payments, and so we've had some unexpected funding available. So that's why you see the prior year funds of almost $115,000 on there. The current year funds from HUD specifically for 2019 was $238,184. And so 20% of that is allowed to be spent on admin, can't go above that cap. Code enforcement, the $36,700 supports the salary of our code enforcement department, not one person specifically, but just the activity in that department. The Literacy Council, that's the supporting English as a second language. Is $28,000. That's mainly for the operation costs with staffing. And then I'm going to skip the YMCA one real quick. And then referral and debris removal, that's another traditional one. Oh, I should have deleted the and possible, sorry. And that's for, shoot. That should only be $2,727. That one is to support the code enforcement activity for individuals who are not in compliance but need to become in compliance and can do so voluntarily with a little bit of financial support. A new one for this year is the YMCA Boots on the Ground. It's an educational program for youth, and it's a pilot project that they're doing this year, and they hope to be able to run it twice. It's a 12-week program where youth just learn basic soft skills, kind of confidence, and then also try and bring in different STEAM programs. So it's, so where it says 5,727, that should be just 2,727. And then the final one where we would allocate the rollover funds from 2018, and then the largest allocation from our current year funds is for community center improvement. So this can be infrastructure, facilities related, so anything from a community kitchen or a commercial kitchen to audio, improved audio in the social hall. And I know Finance Committee had an HVAC presentation today, so that I'm checking on, but has the potential to also be eligible for this project. So there's nothing specific in the community center allocated except for community center improvements and upgrades to support potential uses at that location. In the total available, I should have just done that column. Those numbers are correct. So total for 2019, that includes rollover, and our 2019 allocation is just over $350,000. Okay. So if you have any questions, or we can do public comment.
Any questions from Brooklyn before I turn over to members of the audience? All right, this is a public hearing, so any member of the audience who would wish to address the city council regarding our CDBG 2019 annual action plan, feel free to come up. Seeing no takers, I will turn it over to the city council for any action they may be willing
I'm
to
going to pay
take.
someone one day to. Just kidding, like conflict of interest. We did have people asking to get mailed and for links to the plan. So, and then I did receive an email from Sarah Rolfs that they are sending a public comment letter just in support of the community center. So should get that, I think, next week.
All right, I'll turn over to the council for any action they may be willing to take.
Your Honor, I would like to make a motion for City Council to adopt the City of Wenatchee Community Development Block Grant Draft 2019 Annual Action Plan as a final version and authorize the mayor to sign the application for the CDBG assistance, certifications, and assurances.
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Harrell, second by Councilmember Markart to adopt the City of Wenatchee Community Development Block Grant Draft 2019 Annual Action Plan as final version. Authorize the mayor to sign the application for CDBG assistance, certifications, and assurances. Discussion. Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Brooklyn. Mayor's report. Seahawks start in like 5 minutes. I think the stuff we talked about in executive session catches you up with most of our real estate items. I will tell you that I was involved in a meeting in Douglas County. You know, we have our pit property over there, and Douglas County Badger Mountain Road is falling into the canyon, and they need to reroute Badger Mountain Road. So they purchased some property over there adjacent to our property, and so there's going to be a roadway changed and maybe some development in the area. And so we've met with the Fraley's and the Stymacks about getting water over there. So just letting you know there's some discussion now, and we're sort of working through, way too early to figure out what anything might look like. But we did have a meeting, or I did last, I believe it was Wednesday. We did tour the PUD on the Confluence Parkway routing. Took, I don't know, it must have been a dozen PUD mid-level managers, walked them through the Confluence Parkway, what it would look like, just talking about moving power lines and fiber and all that sort of stuff. That went really well. We do have a new first Tuesday of the month, 11:30 meeting with the county commissioners in their offices. So Alice and I went on Tuesday for a half hour, talked about a number of city-county issues, trying to get permission for regional water to drill, working on some road stuff together. I think it was very helpful. I've heard good positive feedback from that. So we are going to make that an annual event. It's a little easier to go to a county commissioner meeting. Just seems to be better. We're a little bit more formal, and it's just easier to have that conversation with them. So we are doing that regularly. We did do a national night out on Tuesday. We did river cutting for Rotary Park's new shelter yesterday. A number of meetings today. Transportation Council awarded another $1.2 million to the city to help with the NEPA for Confluence Parkway. So nice to keep Confluence Parkway NEPA going. As you know, we did not get the infra grant, but we think one of the weaknesses is we don't have enough environmental done. So we are going to keep cranking on environmental. I'm not sure $1.2 million is enough to get us all the way to the finish line, but we should be most of the way there. So we're excited about that. That's always political grabbing and taking, and I offended some county commissioners today. But at the end of the day, we got our $1.2 million, so that was the goal. Allison, anything else to add to any of that?
I think you caught the bulk of the meetings from the past, so.
looking ahead, there is a lot coming up.
Yeah, so busy next Thursday, super busy on the 22nd. I think lots of stuff on that agenda.
The next week at our work session, we'll have the ARC architects here, so you'll get design drawings for this building.
Okay.
And then Glenn will be doing a review of the housing code, which is out for comment now, so we would encourage everybody to go take a look at that. Ruth, you have your first RiverCom next Wednesday. So those are the big.
Yeah, and congratulations to our friends at Rivercom, and congratulations, Jim, and your folks at Link for getting
I was
those
gonna say,
taxes passed. That's pretty
good
impressive.
news.
Prop one passed, it was quite a bit more of a margin than I anticipated, but yeah, so there's going to be some good things coming.
Yeah.
In the next 2 to 3 years. I think everybody's aware we're not collecting the full 2/10 right off the bat. We're
Right.
gonna, it takes a year and a half to get buses ordered and hire personnel and all those kinds of things to get things up and running. But there will be some added service fairly quickly as we get started on that. But the full take on the funding will be phased, and
Right.
so the bite, I guess, won't be quite as bad. That
Must have been quite a party, because Richard still wasn't at Transportation Council this morning, and that was 2 days ago, so.
Still eating hamburgers.
Yeah, I don't know what he's doing, but that must have been quite a
Eating
party.
hamburgers and drinking sangria.
Oh, is he traveling somewhere?
I don't know.
Okay, I just, yeah. All right, council members, anything for the good of the order?
I'm not sure yet. There's a possibility I won't be here next Thursday, but I'll let you know by Monday.
Keep us posted.
Keith be gone.
All right, everybody, thanks. We're adjourned.